Hello, guys. I welcome in Andy Staples to Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. Andy, we're at SEC Media Days. We're going to dive into it for a second, but what have you been paying attention to this week so far at SEC Media Days?
I mean, the shoe game of the players.
Yeah.
Their shoes cost more than my car. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Have you seen some of the chains these guys are wearing?
They're yeah. Like, you need like a Jacob the Jeweler type? Is that how we do this?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know where to order one of those.
Did you see Danny Stutzman's jacket yesterday?
I did not see Danny's jacket. I did see Billy Bowman. Billy Bowman got a sweet hat, by the way, because they do the custom hats for the guys. Billy's was probably my favorite of the ones I've seen.
Yeah, Danny was rocking the jacket with I think it was his dog on the inside of it. It was pretty cool. But Andy, let's talk OU. Obviously, new member coming into the SEC. What do you feel like? You're somebody who talks to a lot of different media members. What's the feeling around Oklahoma as they enter the SEC?
Well, I think people who follow college football understand that Oklahoma is one of the more recession-proof programs in the country. You know, I think Ohio State's probably the only one that is more consistent than Oklahoma. So, I don't think anybody who actually follows the sport is worried about Oklahoma's long-term success in the SEC. They're going to be fine. I think short-term, if Tyler Guyton and Walter Rouse were starting at tackle this year, rather than them having to retool the offensive line this year, I think you'd feel a lot more confident with Oklahoma coming in and having to play this brutal schedule they have to play. But I think that's, there are going to be question marks like that. It's the fan bases that are interesting because I do feel like a lot of the fan bases just assume, Oklahoma and Texas aren't ready for this. They don't understand the grind of this schedule. I think they kind of do. And especially Oklahoma, which never really ducked anybody out of conference. So they were playing tough, including SEC teams, out of conference. So they understand this. It's just that they've got to be where they need to be roster-wise, and I think defensively they're closer than they've been in a long time to where they want to be. And then we'll just see what happens with that offensive line because Bill Bedenbaugh, it's a guy you trust, and we know the receivers are going to be good. We know Gavin Sawchuk's going to be good. Jackson Arnold, if you talk to any coach, who would you have wanted to have in the class of 2023? Most of them would have said Jackson Arnold. So I think that's the reason. And, you watch a program be willing to let Dillon Gabriel walk to play Jackson Arnold, that tells you what they think of his ceiling.
Yeah. Let's talk about Brent Venables because I thought his speech yesterday up at the press conference was really interesting. He talked a lot about sustainability, trying to build this thing long term. And you mentioned it in the short term. You look at that schedule this coming season, and it's like, all right, you could see it going, 7-5, maybe 8-4, 9-3 would be a really good year. We've talked about that. Where do you think Brent has grown the most, maybe in his first couple years, and where does he still need to get better as he heads into year 3?
Well, I just think we need to see the game management piece of it, and it's weird because you've got 2 new coordinators, and so that's going to be a factor as well. And I realize the offense is still going to be similar, and they've got the defense. I was talking to Billy Bowman, and he said, we understand the defense better than we ever have. And he said, I said, how, when did you really feel comfortable with it? And I said, was it last season? He said, actually, it was kind of this spring. So that's the thing. We saw that at Clemson when Brent went there. It took a minute for the defense to really understand what they were doing. And then as Oklahoma learned the hard way in the bowl game that year, once they got it, they got it.
Tell me about Jackson Arnold. You mentioned him earlier. What are your expectations for him? Because I feel like Eddie and I and other Oklahoma media, we live in this bubble, and you've seen the great quarterbacks come through and the Heisman Trophy winners and all that. And so our expectations are, okay, this guy's going to be elite. But as somebody on the outside, what are your expectations for somebody like that?
Well, that is, like I was saying earlier about other coaches, he's the guy that most of them liked in that class. And it is a good class. I mean, it's got Avery Johnson, it's got Nico. This is a good quarterback class. But if you said, okay, what was your wish list for QBs, he would have been at the top of most of the wish lists. And that tells you something. Now, I think he's going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure because people are going to scoreboard watch with Oregon. Dillon Gabriel is in a fabulous situation at Oregon and is going to put up incredible numbers there because he's been dropped into a ready-made offense with a bunch of NFL offensive linemen and a really deep receiving core. And so you're going to have people saying, well, why'd they let him go? So Jackson Arnold is going to have to tune that part out because there's nothing he can do about that. Yeah. And also, the situations are very different. So I just think how mature can he be? How composed can he be? That he's got to show that. Now, the fact that they're bringing him to SEC Media Days, that's pretty telling. I think they feel like he can handle it. And look, if you grow up as a 5-star quarterback from the state of Texas, you've dealt with all this stuff. Like this is not that big of a deal to you. Yeah. So I think it's gonna be fun to watch his development because again, you don't make that decision unless you think this guy's ceiling is sky high.
They definitely have put all their eggs in the Jackson Arnold basket. I think that's safe to say. And I think it's an important point that you brought up about him being a Texas quarterback. I have this theory that if you're Oklahoma or Texas, you should just take the top quarterback in the state of Texas every single year as your quarterback in your class because the odds of them panning out are probably pretty high. So, I mean.
Yeah, and it's a cultural fit, too. Yeah. Like, they understand the rivalry. They understand playing they play in front of 30,000 people every week in high school. Yeah. So nothing's going to bother them.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how he handles Auburn. I want to dive into the schedule a little bit as we finish up here, Andy. This schedule is brutal. Other than maybe Florida. Florida's got a really tough one.
Florida, Georgia, and Oklahoma, I think, got the real short end of the stick. South Carolina maybe a little bit. Yeah. But, yeah, you look at the way Oklahoma's plays out, Tennessee, the first conference game, everybody's going to be pumped. Tennessee's going to be good. And add the Josh Heupel part of it, the subplot, but just the teams on the field, Tennessee is going to be very, very good. James Pierce, probably the best pass rusher in this league. Yeah. They've got a bolstered receiving core. They feel like their offense is going to be so much more dynamic than it was last year, which it very well could be. And they feel like this is the best defense they've had of the hype layer. So you go from that to at Auburn. And I don't know that people quite grasp how important that game's going to be for both teams. Oklahoma needs to win that game going into the Texas game. Auburn needs to win that game because Auburn's next 3 are at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. And so it becomes this massive pivot point game for the entire season for both teams, and it's the 5th game. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You're the food guy. Everybody knows you as the food guy in college football. OU's got, 4 road games. They've got at Auburn, at Missouri, at Ole Miss, and at LSU. What's one spot in each of those 4 that OU fans need to hit up when they go on the road?
So Auburn, you need to go to the Hound. Okay. Great bourbon selection, great menu, classy. You're not used to. Well, I living in an SEC town and going to a bunch of. Usually there aren't a lot of classy adult bars, but this is one of those. So that's one. Baton Rouge, Elsie's Pie and Plate. Everything is in pie form, so you can have crawfish hand pie as your entree, and then roll into Dutch apple pie for dessert. Yeah. Let's see. What were my other ones?
Missouri.
Missouri. Everybody's going to say Shakespeare's Pizza, which it's a good scene. Yeah. It's pretty good pizza, and you're right there across from campus, so it's just a cool campus pizza place. Booch's is a pool hall where they do these little burgers, and they must make 1,000 a night, and you have one, and you're like, I could eat 100 of these. Yeah. I could do this. Yeah.
And then was the other one Ole Miss? I don't know if we got one.
Well, Ole Miss. Ooh. So many good choices at Ole Miss. I'm going to go – because everybody's going to tell you to go to Ajax Diner, and you should. A great meat and 3, great lunch spot. John Currents is the chef who has the empire there. He's got City Groceries, the big sit-down white tablecloth. Big Bad Breakfast is his breakfast place, which is kind of spread out around the South. But it's awesome, too. But he's got a place called Snack Bar, which is kind of where they do their more experimental stuff, and they try out all their new drinks and all the stuff that they're going to try in some of his other restaurants, and it's outstanding. So smaller, kind of more intimate deal, but laid back, casual, and then you'll see where Big Bad Breakfast is because it's right next door, and so when you're hungover, you can go back to Big Bad Breakfast.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, that's a great way for Andy to kind of help OU fans get into the SEC. I'm looking forward to all these road trips. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Last question before we get you out of here, Andy. Prediction on OU's record and prediction on SEC championship game. Who gets in?
So OU's going to be 12-0 because every time I don't say that, I get yelled at by Oklahoma fans. So 12-0. Which puts them in the end. No,
we're clipping that.
What? Yeah, no. I'm trying to think of a good, realistic record because I think Oklahoma is going to be pretty good. Yep. I just think the schedule sucks, so it's hard to say where that. I think that winds up at like 9-3, with a chance to make going into in November with a chance to make the playoff. And how do those last two Alabama LSU shake out? Yep. And I think that's what it's going to come down to for Oklahoma. The SEC championship game. I feel like Ole Miss has the best path because even if they lose to Georgia, if they can beat LSU in Baton Rouge, I think there's a really good chance they wind up in the SEC championship game. Texas has a good path too. Yep. They have to play Georgia also. Like Ole Miss, they get to Georgia at home, and then they've got to play Oklahoma. But the team that I feel like I can't say we're sleeping on them because I don't think anybody ever sleeps on this team, but Alabama's going to be really freaking good. Yeah. So it may be an Alabama-Ole Miss SEC championship game.
Wow, no Georgia.
Georgia has its hardest 3 games on the road. Yep. Georgia has to play at Alabama, at Ole Miss, at Texas. But here's the thing. Like if Georgia doesn't make the SEC, let's say Georgia's 10-2, doesn't make the SEC championship game. Would it shock you if they're like the 6th seed and they win the national title?
No.
Not in the least, right? And that's what we got to get used to. Yeah. We got to retrain our brains. Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be an awesome. I think it's going to be one of the most interesting college football seasons in a long time because of the realignment, the 12-team playoff. It just seems very unpredictable. Make sure you guys are following Andy Staples, best person to follow nationally for college football. You can find him on 3 platforms. He comes on our show. We go on his show all the time, so I'm sure we'll connect with him again. I'm George Stoia. He's Andy Staples. Make sure you guys keep tuning in to Soonerscoop.com on YouTube.